In the world of competitive sports, things tend to get a bit heated. The question is, are these moments of pure passion or moments of weakness and frustration? In the case of Lando Norris, we might have to dig a little deeper. After all, punching a wall out of anger doesn't seem to be an act of a content man. In fact, it seems like an athlete who's completely fed up with his McLaren team. But before we jump to conclusions, let's take a step back to further diagnose this outbreak by Lando Norris. The rookie driver signed with McLaren, aiming to bring home the first piece of silverware since 2008. This would prove to be a monumental year for the F1 rookie, as he would go on to finish 11th in the Drivers' Championship. But things weren't completely smooth during this debut year for Lando. At the French Grand Prix, Norris would finish in 9th place. On the surface, this seems reasonable, right? Well, the issue is that Lando was actually on track to finish in 7th place. But because of technical issues with the car, it caused it to slip and ultimately lose out on those precious points. Now, it is quite common for mechanical issues to cause drivers to slip. But with Lando and his time with McLaren, it seems to happen quite often.
Yeah, I think he's got some other running plans.
Good.
So,
Lando is now going to try and push the car back himself.
That same year, he was forced to resign from a race due to a complete engine failure. Oh, and that was after suffering catastrophic penalties in a race for having too many engine components. But hey, this was all just the debut season, right? Surely nothing could go wrong in 2020. Well, nothing more than races being canceled due to a generational pandemic, that is. Still, Lando Norris had a strong year, finishing in 3rd place at the Austrian Grand Prix. He was able to claim his first podium finish, making him the 3rd youngest driver to finish on the podium in Formula One history. But despite this success, this F1 season was obviously a frustrating one for Lando, considering how it ended. Over the few years, Norris would continue with his success for such a young age. But he still hasn't been able to win the coveted Formula One championship, which brings us to the present day. Rumors are swirling that Lando Norris could be considering leaving McLaren, which leads us to 2 main questions. Why do these rumors exist? And do they have any merit? Many of these rumors began due to an outburst by Norris following a disappointing testing season in which he didn't perform well. And he spun out. Oh, and so did his teammate with McLaren. After this poor showing, journalist Will Buxton claims he saw Norris punch a wall out of complete frustration. Oof.
Punched the flimsy, sort of makeshift wall as he walked through. It was, it wasn't going to knock the wall down, but it was there was that little bit of frustration.
Just days after this outburst, rumors began to fly that Lando could be looking to take his talents elsewhere. Which brings us to the next question. Could these rumors possibly be rooted in truth? Well, taking a look at his contract, he actually just signed an extension with McLaren through 2025. So you would think this would put these rumors to bed, right? Not so fast. Apparently, these contracts aren't as official as you might think. According to Ted Kravitz, Sky's F1 presenter, drivers' contracts are not worth the paper they're written on. Whoa, strong words from Mr. Kravitz. He went on to say that he could move any place at any time as long as the price is right. But wait, just because he can leave McLaren doesn't mean he will leave McLaren, right? Of course not. But it also doesn't mean that he won't leave, right? Okay, this is all getting a bit confusing. Let's step back for a second. Lando Norris is one of the hottest names in Formula One, and he signed with McLaren through 2025. There is just no way he would leave that. You might even be wondering, what other teams would even have interest in signing him? Well, funny you mention that. Remember Ted Kravitz, the guy who assured us that Lando Norris could absolutely leave as long as the price was right? Yeah, about that. He also had a few more things to say. He claimed that there have been talks with none other than the Red Bull team. Talk about throwing the Formula One world into a frenzy. I know what you're thinking. All of this over simply punching a wall? Well, I mean, yes. But remember, this wasn't an isolated incident. The spin-out, the engine malfunctions, the penalty for the team not paying attention to engine components. This has been a cycle of disappointment. a cycle of malfunctions. And in the public eye, Lando Norris has appeared frustrated for quite some time. But whose fault is it? Is McLaren really to blame? After all, Lando Norris has consistently placed well and has been considered a rising star in Formula One. But maybe that's the issue. Maybe Lando believes he's wasting his prime years and all he wants is to win a driver's championship. If he does make the move to Red Bull, then he clearly believes it has been McLaren holding him back. Sergio Perez, a current driver for Red Bull Racing, has seen success in the past few years, and Lando Norris clearly has a bit of self-confidence, let's call it. So maybe he believes he could take their equipment, their team, their situation, and do what he has always longed to do: win the whole damn thing. Which is the whole point. This is the main problem people have with Lando Norris, though. The thought that he could simply go to Red Bull Racing and immediately perform better than Sergio Perez? Or is he just blaming his issues on McLaren? It simply doesn't rub people the right way, and that makes sense. I mean, it is a bit arrogant to think in this manner. But this brings us back to the original questions. Does this frustration with McLaren have merit? And is the frustration actually with McLaren or with himself? After all, much of this has been speculation. Or has it? Keep in mind, people like Ted Kravitz and journalists like Will Buxton don't just say things without intent. They are deliberate with their words, which leads you to believe there could be something to these rumors. Typically, when these things are thrown out in the media, such as the report that he is in talks with Red Bull, means this is a feeler being put out to see how the Formula One landscape and its fans react to this news. It is a way to test the waters and see if it will be well received. It's also a way to send a message to your current team, to McLaren, as if to say, "This contract means nothing, fix this or I'll walk." This, in itself, feels like the likeliest possibility. That Lando Norris is using his frustrations, his past failures, and his actions in an extremely calculated manner, to not only put out feelers in the racing world and to other teams, but also to send a message to McLaren. Maybe it will work? All in all, there are two things we do know. Lando punched a wall, and a report came out in the same week that he was in talks with Red Bull. As far as coincidences go, I think it's safe to say this isn't one. What do you think? Is Lando Norris frustrated with his current team? Or has this all been blown out of proportion? I guess only time will tell. In the meantime, keep your eyes peeled for more updates and your walls safe around Lando Norris.